Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. So, time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail columnist, Sarah Vine, with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome to both of you. So, to the front pages then. Let us start with the Metro, which looks at the economic toll of today's strikes, reporting that since last summer, they've cost the economy around £2 billion. Now, that really hurts, they say. The Guardian understands the National Audit Office is looking at whether to launch an investigation into the decision to allow taxpayers' money to be used to employ Boris Johnson's private lawyers for the Partygate inquiry. The Eye suggests that a return to frontline politics by the short-lived Prime Minister, Liz Truss, could lead to further divisions within the Conservative Party. The RAF faces a crisis over its drive for diversity. That's on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The Daily Mirror calls for stricter action on dangerous dogs in the wake of the death of 4-year-old Alice Stones. Daily Express reports on the ongoing search for missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, and her parents' fear that she's been abducted. The Financial Times says a multi-billion-dollar share sale to raise funds by Indian-owned conglomerate Adani Enterprise has been called off after its share price slumped. A new law to stop school strike mayhem as teachers could be forced to tell schools they're striking ahead of time. That's the lead for the Daily Mail. And The Sun has a world exclusive reporting that the government is planning measures to better regulate football club takeovers and give fans more say in running them. Well, a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. So let's head straight to Kevin Maguire and Sarah Vine. So, Sarah, let's take a look at the Metro. Now it really hurts. And the point our political correspondent was saying earlier was there comes a point, surely, where the cost of the strikes outweighs the cost of paying people the extra money in their pay packet. So are we nearly there?
Well, I don't know. £2 billion seems like quite a lot of money to me. I don't know what the maths of it is. But yes, I mean, it is crippling. It's costing this country an awful lot of money. I suppose some people would argue that if the government had just given them a pay rise, then that money wouldn't have been wasted. Others would argue that, the government can't be held to ransom by strikes. I mean, the problem is that everybody else is just stuck in the middle in a sort of nightmare of, everything is paralysed. You can't do anything. My son wasn't able to go to school today, and even if he had, he probably wouldn't have been able to get there because nothing was running. So, it's just an ongoing Mexican standoff between the government and the strike and the unions. And I just wish they would just get on and sort it out. It's all those ancillary businesses, isn't it, Kevin? The coffee shop by the station, the central city, restaurant that's not getting anybody in, cafes, sandwich shops, all of that are eventually impacted. I mean, working out the true cost is going to be difficult. It's hard enough working out how many schools were closed today, isn't it? But at what point does the standoff wither away, do you think, or does it not? The RMT union talking about, heading through the spring with this action.
No, but you're right, Anna. These figures are always large. 2 billion, nice round figure. How accurate it is, but certainly in the rail industry, the Transport Minister Hugh Merriman said they've already gone beyond the point where paying a higher increase would have been cheaper than holding out the cost of the industry, because of course the rail companies are compensated by the government with taxpayers' money, bizarrely. But if you've got a cafe on a station, you don't get that. And the only way to get out of these strikes is to negotiate, try and find common ground and push forward. And at the moment, they all seem to be going backwards, and the industrial action is getting more intense. We've seen firefighters this week vote that they will join them at some point. The next union strike in Education England and Wales, National Education Union, isn't for 27 days. That surely should be enough time to get some negotiations going to try and get them postponed. Because, as you say, there is an impact on the economy. It's who do you blame? Whose side do you take? And at the moment, the government is losing the propaganda war and getting more blame than the trade unions.
Yes, we heard Oliver Dowden again on Sky News this evening saying you can't bake inflation into the system. But I suppose the point is, once you give a pay rise, Sarah, you know, that pay rise is held forever. So the cost to the taxpayer is baked in, you know, from then on. Kevin's frowning at me. The pay increase lasts, does it not? You know, your wages are already higher.
Yeah, but if you have inflation, it's 10.5%. That is ongoing. You've lost a tenth of your spending power already. So that is baked in. Baking in inflation. A lot of these increases wouldn't be directly inflationary because we don't charge for education. We don't charge for health. So I understand if there's a private company and it gives a pay rise and then it puts up prices to recoup that can be inflationary. But it isn't the case in education. It certainly isn't the case in health.
No,
it would be the case, Kevin, in the fire service.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying the government says they're baking in inflation. I'm saying they're baking in the cost to the taxpayers, like two separate things there, right?
Yeah, but if inflation came essentially, we'll say Putin and Ukraine. Big shock to the system. British economy is very weak. As we saw the IMF report, we're doing worse than other comparable economies. We're not going to do better in the future. Government will have to take some response for that. But it's these wage demands aren't driven by, they aren't driving inflation. Inflation is driving the wage demands. Dowden has just got it completely around his neck and he's looking at it the wrong way.
OK, Sarah, that question was to you, but should we move on to the front of the Daily Mail paper, which is this idea that the unions did not need to say specifically which teachers were striking. Suggestion was they'd actually asked teachers not to tell their heads if they were on strike. Teachers are having to work it out by asking who was not striking. An idea of a new law to stop parents being left in limbo. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that if your child's school is on strike and if your child's not going to be able to go into school, you do need to know because you will have to make arrangements. So to be honest, it's not just teachers. It's not just head teachers that this would help. It's also parents. And, I've got lots of colleagues who've had to stay at home today to look after their children because obviously they can't go to work if their children are at home. So it's not, it's just I understand that for the unions, it has more effect because it creates more chaos, but it's not fair on head teachers who are trying to run a school, and it's also not fair on parents and on children. I mean, my son is doing his A-levels. Every day that he's not at school is an issue.
Absolutely, and I know teachers. Yeah, the dog wants to get out, doesn't it? And I know they were trying to prioritise children in exam years, weren't they? But obviously, it's not always possible. You could always get up and open a door while I talk to Kevin, but there we are.
She thinks there's someone outside. There isn't anyone outside. It's a fantasy of hers.
Oh, really? Okay.
Sounds like the Hound of the Baskervilles. Is it a big dog?
No, it's a tiny little Lhasa Apso. It's a Tibetan temple guardian, and it thinks I'm its temple, and that the hordes are coming to get me.
Yeah,
that's
we're invading the temple, Kevin. It's a problem tonight. Anyway, let's go to the.
It's only about being barking. Yeah.
Let's go to the Guardian, shall we? Now then, this is Boris Johnson defending himself against Partygate allegations. Where does he get the money for the defence? Take it away.
If it's me, the National Audit Office officials are just looking at the cost of legal advice for Boris Johnson. I think it's a fair principle. If a government minister in the line of his or her duty is subsequently going to face legal action because of the position they held, then they should get legal advice. Now, there's two questions here. One is, was Johnson really personally culpable? Should he be publicly supported? I think he probably should. But secondly, then it's the cost. How is that bill so high? That is enormous, absolutely enormous. I know he's going to face a Commons Privileges Committee hearing. There'll be a public inquiry down the line, but that is a big, big bill.
Sarah?
And is it good spending of taxpayers' money?
Yeah, I mean, lawyers are very expensive. I mean, the thing is that I think Kevin's right. He did lose his job because of these allegations, and in any other situation, that is what would happen. I think it's right that he should have this help, but it doesn't. It's £222,000. I mean, I suppose the real question here is, why do lawyers charge so much?
To the eye now, fascinating conversation this week after the IMF report put the UK down the league tables on growth for the next year, about why our growth is bad and what needs to be done about it, which has brought a lot of the Truss heights back. Anyway, here's the eye front page now, Kevin. Liz Truss comeback ignites fears of a new Tory civil war. A comeback already?
I know the woman with no shame after she crashed the economy, which I think the Conservative estimate was a 30 billion cost as a rescue package for pension funds needed to be. Interest rates went up, the pound fell. Absolutely incredible. But Keir Starmer must think he's having a birthday every day. You've got Boris Johnson stalking Rishi Sunak, who probably needs to take out a restraining order. And now you've got Liz Truss rearing her head just to remind all the voters about the utter chaos she unleashed. It's weird politics, this. It's almost like, and it keeps coming back now, the end of the John Major era, when the Conservative Party was falling apart, very factional, and didn't want to be led.
Yeah. It's the eternal Tory tragedy. But I do think Liz Truss seems to speed everything up. She was Prime Minister for 40 days, and now she's only been gone for about 3 weeks, and she's already making a comeback. So, it's just bonkers. I don't understand why anyone credible in the Tory party is even remotely entertaining this concept. It's just not. It's just unhelpful to the Tory party and to the country.
I want to see more of kamikaze Liz. I want to see her launching a leadership bid.
I know you do, but we've got enough problems with Matt Hancock, Liz Truss. Enough.
Yes, well,
Dominic Raab.
Yeah, well, how far the comeback comes, the former Prime Minister is preparing for her Westminster return after her breather and will demand policies that drive growth, sparking panic among Tory backbenchers. An ex-cabinet minister telling the Eye that the Conservative Party risks a new era of factionalism. So you've got Johnson in Kyiv, in Washington, you've got Liz Truss back, you've certainly got those who are pro-growth, to give them the loosest title, speaking out after the IMF report, Sarah. Do they not realise the precarious position they are in the polls as we head, fairly rapidly now towards a general election?
I don't know. They clearly don't. And they clearly don't understand that what the country really wants now is stability, continuity, a sensible person in charge who's not going to do any grandstanding or come up with any crazy ideas that are going to crash the economy. Everybody wants growth, but, there's a process that has to happen. You have to put the ingredients in the mix in order to be able to achieve that growth. You can't just kind of waltz in and say, oh, yes, no, let's have some growth next Thursday, which is just bonkers. They need to be grown up about this. And most people in the Tory party are. The problem is there's a vocal minority who are just, to quote George Osborne, swivel-eyed loons who just will not stop. And was it Boris who said that? Was it no, George? I may have got someone said it anyway.
Yeah, we'll look it up next time. Don't worry about it. In the meantime, the strategy for Sir Keir Starmer seems now to attack the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and we're told they will become increasingly personal because he is outpolling his party. You could say Labour's damaged the party, or they've damaged themselves. Who knows about the Tories? But is Rishi Sunak now in the sights for Labour, do you think, Kevin?
Oh, yes. Look, the Conservative Party appears to have a President Sunak approach, pushing him forward. Starmer outpolls Sunak, but you can see that he's a problem. You watch Prime Minister today, and it's all the other Tories. It's all sleaze and scandal, and Sunak is hopelessly weak with terrible judgment, and he seems to know nothing until after everybody else, which it was on Gavin Williamson. Then it became Nadhim Zawari, and now the caravan's moved on to Dominic Raab. I think that's a little bit unfair. I don't think he's completely in the dark. I mean, I think on Raab, the key thing is that there were no formal complaints given to Rishi. So, you can't just, fire someone. Sarah, didn't you? You knew. I
I've only ever met Dominic Raab once, and he was very nice to me, but I guess he probably would be nice to me. So, I'm probably not a reliable witness. But you can't fire somebody on the basis of rumours. There has to be due process. And I think he's doing the right thing. Let's just wait and see what the inquiry or whatever it is they're going to do tells us. And if he is a bully, then obviously he should go. And if he's not, then not.
And what do you feel? You feel he's going to have to go, don't you?
I couldn't possibly comment. I'm just going to do something about my dog, if you will excuse me for one second.
On that note, we'll take a break. Sarah's not going to be drawn, as you can see. Anyway, lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. We will look at why the RAF has been forced to defend its recruiting practices when we come back. You're watching the press preview with me once again, Kevin Maguire and Sarah Vine. Sarah, let's go to the Daily Telegraph, shall we? The RAF facing a crisis over its drive for diversity. White men were discriminated against in 160 cases, the paper says, with this push for women and ethnic minorities. Tell us more.
Yes, well, I mean, it's not often you read a headline that says white men discriminated against, but I mean, in this case, I think what's happened here is that there's a kind of bit of wokeness going on, which is that they've decided that they need to have more women and ethnic minorities. But the problem is that if you're going to be flying fighter jets, you just need the best person to fly the fighter jets. So I can sort of see why you would say maybe in your back office or in your administration staff, you would have some sort of diversity recruitment drive. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about soldiers or fighters, you've just got to have the best person for the job, and you have to be. I think you can't judge by sex or by race. You've just got to take who does it best. And in this case, they didn't. They got carried away, and I think someone resigned. In fact, a woman resigned over this because she said it was impossible for her to do her job because she was so hamstrung by this sort of directive.
Yeah, I mean, it was our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, who first brought the world this story last year. But certainly Tobias Ellwood, chair of the Commons Defence Select Committee, in questioning the head of the RAF, did point out that everyone had passed their exams. It's just that the best ones, he suggested, were not being promoted, Kevin.
Yeah, but the Air Chief Marshal denied there'd been any impact on standards, and it all seemed to be lots of conjecture here. You want for pilots, you want the best pilots, of course, but you want to widen the talent pool. And if people of colour, Black Britons of Asian origin, or their heritage have been ignored, or women, when you get in you get into a cockpit, then you want to make sure you've got the best. Why would the best always be some posh private schoolboy? If that's where they've been retained. I think it's a very odd way to say it's 160 people discriminated against white men, rather than saying, look, they've actually widened it to get the most talented.
Yes, but if the people who are the most talented don't happen to comply with the diversity laws, then that doesn't make sense. You've just got to have the best person. I think the problem with the case, though,
I agree. You want the best person, but have they been missing the best people? If they would have been, if they'd been ignoring all these, these people from various other backgrounds, whether they're male or female, whether they're of colour or white women, and they've just been going to the same people time after time after time.
Or is it the case that people from different backgrounds and women don't really feel that the armed forces are a career path for them, which is probably what the situation is. So they don't tend to be drawn to those jobs. And that is a different thing. And that's something that you can only really change over time. So that's about making the armed forces more receptive to people who might not necessarily feel they were naturally at home there. And that is an important thing. What you can't do is sort of suddenly make the armed forces less efficient because you want to have a quota in a period of a year.
There's no evidence, Sarah, that it's been made less efficient. It's kind of defending a privilege and saying, look, we've got this group, we've always had this group, we're going to keep this group, and we're going to lock all these other people out.
Well, no, presumably the reason they say that these people have been discriminated against is presumably because we don't know the details, but maybe they've been doing it for longer, or they've got more expertise, or they've got more flight hours, or whatever. I don't know how it works, but there will be reasons why these people. It won't just be because they're white; it's because they've got the experience. I mean, just because somebody. It doesn't mean that if you are a white male, and you should know this, Kevin, that you're a very experienced journalist, and we all enjoy your views and your experience. just because of your colour doesn't mean to say that you should give way to somebody who's less experienced because they're a woman, for example.
Yeah, but you know, Sarah, Fleet Street newsrooms now have far more women than they used to. And I think they're better for it.
That's a process. That's a process that has taken place over quite a long period of time, and it's quite organic. And it has happened because more and more women have felt able to come into the profession and have felt able to do well in the profession. That is something that obviously needs to be encouraged. But you can't just. It's not a switch that you can flick. Is all I'm saying.
We've run out of time. We didn't do Delilah being banned, that great Tom Jones song. Anyway, we'll see you later. Thank you both very, very much indeed.